What's up, guys? This is D Style here. Thanks to those joining me live and to those that will be joining me on archive. Okay, just writing something down really quick. Something for work, but multitasking. But check it out. First of all, I'm not sure if it's as of right now. I haven't checked or anything. I'm not sure if it's out yet or tomorrow or later on the week. But I did do a recording with Dream Chase Boxing. Make sure you check out that channel and subscribe. A kind of a topic. Didn't elaborate much into the possibility of a civil war in that video, and I was kind of focusing more on foreign policy and our foreign wars more than anything. But it's a question that keeps coming up, and I'm seeing people do videos about it. And look, anyone who thinks, and this is just again, this is my opinion, right? But anyone who believes that there's going to be like a very specific civil war, like for example, like people get together and fight the government, or two groups of people face off against each other, or hey, even multitudes of people facing off against each other. It's even more complicated than that, right? We all need to understand that we live in a big country, over 300 million people. Two of the states are outside of the continental USA, right? In territories that we own and embassies across the world, but that's not here nor there. Of the states here, it's very different in El Paso, Texas, than it is in New York City, right? The demographic is different, right? The culture is different, and just like as it would in Sacramento or Los Angeles or San Francisco or Seattle. Okay, well, we're talking about different worlds here. The way it is in the South. Sure, there's a lot of similarities here and there, but just in general, there's a lot of, if we want to call it, multicultural issues going on. It's not that simple, right? So, I mean, if first of all, a chain of events, which is possible, right? Nobody believes a quote unquote civil war is possible until it's actually at the brink of happening, right? Now, if people believe that, like for example, what's happening in Syria right now is complicated, I mean that's nothing compared to what would happen in this country if it was ever in that type of disarray, right? So if you look at the situation in Syria, very complicated situation, right? And you're looking at Muslims, Christians, different ideologies with the religion of Muslim, um, and then you have the government involved, and then you had the Russians helping the Syrian government. You have the U.S. helping some of the rebels, and then some of the rebels started creating alliances with ISIS, and then we didn't want to help ISIS, so then we just stayed out of the whole thing altogether. But then we wanted to condemn the Russians for bombing innocent people. So it was just a big mess, right? Day. The same with a lot of the nations that we left in disarray over there. All right. I mean, we are separate. I mean, if there was ever a civil war, we would be separated by not just racial lines, but by religion, ethnic identity, nationality, different ideologies, right? A mix of all these things. The way the United States is today and the way it functions today, the melting pot that it is today, is far more complex, right, than just about anything on record, right? I mean, you probably have to go all the way back to the Roman Empire, to kind of see this much, different culture identity. But even then, back then, it was easier to control people. There was no internet. There was no cyberspace. They didn't have this type of technology. There wasn't this type of weaponry. Um, know how to read. They had people a lot more controlled through religion, but they had more people controlled than they do today. So it's a far more complex situation today than ever, right? Actually, far more likely that we end up in our anarchy than we do civil war. Right? I just don't believe it's going to be an organized civil war, more so than it's going to be a bunch of anarchy, which won't stop until eventually the government takes control over it. Right? Pretty much it. Now, how long that anarchy will last, I'm not sure. Right? And I'm not talking like the anarchists that go protest at rallies. No, I'm talking real anarchy. Right? And can that happen? Well, we've already seen elements of stuff like this happen, right? I mean, we've already seen New York police refuse to patrol streets simply because the mayor said something critical about them, right? I mean, just think about that. I mean, that could be the start of anarchy right there, right? And you're already seeing, a friction between police departments, and citizens. And then you have extreme loyal people anyway, to police departments, right? Which makes it very dangerous for us to have a police state. Now, that's another possibility. Okay, we could definitely go that route. It just really depends how people shift here, right? The problem here is, not like other countries, in the United States, citizens can actually, in most places, arm themselves, all right, and arm themselves with military-style weapons, right? So that's very different than other situations you have in other countries, all right? So, and one may say, well, there you go. That's why we need the Second Amendment. Look, I'm under no illusion here, okay, that citizens would be able to defeat its military, right? That's not going to happen. But the reason I say anarchy would happen is you got to look at all the conflicts here. I mean, if soldiers are asked to, like, for example, if police departments cannot control a city, for example, right? Let's say for whatever reason, a city revolts. There's a big revolt and police cannot do anything about it. At that point, there would have to be some type of executive order to send in the National Guard, right? Now, if a big revolt happens, which we would be seeing at not a mass scale, I don't believe, but we'd be seeing it like in cities, especially. It's interesting. I mean, look, by no means do I want this to happen, and I really hope it doesn't, because it's going to get ugly, right? But it's a possibility, right? It really is. I just think anarchy is far more likely, looking at all the different components here, right? And if certain areas fall into anarchy, or if you want to call it civil war, you have to think about, you know, like foreign powers. Like, what role are the Russians going to have in this? If they see that the United States is in distress, right? And I don't mean like, I mean like the nation itself with its citizens. What how opportunistic anyway, would the Russians be in a situation? How opportunistic would the Chinese be in the situation? How opportunistic would Mexico be in a situation? And how opportunistic would Canada be in a situation? Right? Sure, they're allies now, but given opportunistic situations, maybe not so much. I mean, and if again, this is a lot of things have to fall in place for this to happen, right? And we'll talk about that, but if it were to happen, yes, I see a situation, ironically enough, because this is what happens in these type of environments. There's a lot of refugees, right? And where are they going to want to go? All right, some of them, like in Florida, may take boats to, Cuba, right? Right. Some are going to want to go south of the border to Mexico. Some of them want to go north of the border to Canada, right, to flee a lot of what's going on here, right? So look, again, a lot of things have to happen for us to fall into that situation, but it would be very ironic if, we end up in a situation like that, right? And look, anybody who doesn't believe that if the United States was in a very vulnerable state, that China wouldn't make moves to, and it's not like, I'm not saying like they're going to send troops over here. You never know, but I don't think that's what's going to happen, right? But keep in mind, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. We owe China a lot of money, right? That's number one. We're in debt to China. And if China feels that they're not going to get their money back, then a lot of things could happen, right? The same with the Russians. The world economy could strip the dollar from being the world's currency, which would be devastating to our economy, right? And could strip the United States from being the global superpower that it is, right? And if that happens, I mean, oh boy, are Americans not used to that type of lifestyle? Like, you know what I mean? So, we're more privileged than you think we are. Let's just put it that way. All right. Whenever Donald Trump goes all over the place and talks about how everybody takes advantage of us and, this, that, and the third, percent of the population in the world, right? And you reap the benefits of most of the world's resources. I'm not sure if we should be making that argument, but that's another story for another day. So for anyone who doesn't believe that other superpowers would be taking advantage of a situation like that, you're crazy. All right. Now, how would this happen? Like, what things would have to happen? So, I have a theory, right? Because there's different ways this could happen, and this is just a conversation. I'm not saying this is likely, right? And I'm not saying like, oh my God, this is going to happen. I don't want to see somebody come 4 years later or 8 years later. Oh my God, I can't believe this guy was talking about a civil war. And I'm not saying this is likely, but if it were to happen, I'm just giving you a hypothesis on how I believe it would happen. A lot of things would have to fall in place. Okay, now some of them, scary enough, already happened, right? So the president of the United States is already beefing, okay, with the president of Mexico, prime minister of Canada, with the prime minister of, Australia. Okay, I mean the beef has already started, and I believe the ambassador to the UN that Donald Trump picked has already condemned Russia for some recent actions. So the White House hasn't said anything about that, so that's interesting. So friction with other countries is going to have to be a component of that. But right now, as you look across the U.S., you have a divided country, right? And that is a recipe for disaster. Because I'm not just talking like there's a heated debate or two ideologies and just, just exchanging ideas. And when I say divided, I don't even mean like two sides, right? I mean, we see so much division in religious lines, race lines, ethnic identity, nationality, ideology, a mix of all these things, economic status. There's all these things are causing so much friction and so much division. All these may apply to one person. Maybe just one of these applies to people, right? A mixture of them can apply. It's right. Something that's to your heart may not be to my heart, right? And that's just the reality. That's the situation we're in. So when I say this is a divided country, I don't mean like we're divided in half. Like there's a good side and the bad side. No, I mean people are all over the place, right? They could be divided in one instant, but not divided in another instant, just depending on what you're talking about exactly, right? And right now, as we speak, okay, you see a lot of protests going on, right? Now, I am a firm believer that there's a time and place for protests, right? Meaning, I am a firm believer that if you're going to protest something, you should be ready for shit to go down, right? So let me tell you what I mean by that. Meaning, you should be ready to be arrested. You should know that it's a possibility. You should know that they could release hounds on your ass, right? You should know that there's going to be a backlash, and you should know that it may not even be popular what you're doing, right? I believe, just protesting because it's the thing to do is the right way to protest, right? I've never been a fan of marches. I've never been a fan of asking the government for permission to hold a organized protest somewhere, where it's kind of in a square somewhere, and you have a designated time of 2 hours, and then that's it. I've never been a fan of that. I believe that if you're going to protest something, it should be for a cause that you believe in, to the point of you being willing to be locked up in jail for it, right? So when I looked at the Women's March, I wasn't a big fan of the Women's March, right? It doesn't mean that I'm a misogynist and I don't think women should have the right to vote, or I don't think they should have civil rights, or I think they're second-class citizens. No, I just feel, like the whole thing was unnecessary. That's it. It accomplished nothing, in my opinion. Absolutely nothing. Now, protests that I could look at and say, I support that protest, a Standing Rock protest, right? Those water protectors over there, they were protecting their land, which was literally being seized. All right? This wasn't some policy or some ideology or somebody that got elected, or no. This was a pipeline that was being shoved down their throats against their will. And they took water cannons and below freezing temperatures for it. Okay, they got hit with stun grenades and basically victimized by law enforcement for it. But something got done. Obama actually did not grant the final permit, right? And now that they're willing to do the same thing. As of right now, that they're getting arrested. There's warrants out for their arrest for simply protesting the pipeline, right? They're getting more aggressive, as it was predicted to be under Donald Trump, right? So that's a protest I can look at and say, yeah, those dudes are courageous, right? That they believe in this. They're protecting their water. They're protecting their sacred land, right? They're not just protesting because they don't like the person that got elected, or I don't like Trump, but I'm not going to go march, saying like fuck Trump. It's a waste of fucking time, right? And the reason I'm bringing up protest is because one of the first things taken away from people, all right, before there's a civil war or anarchy or anything like that, is their freedom of speech, right? Now, freedom of speech is slowly being eradicated little by little in this country. And I personally, I see problems in the left with it. With a lot of these social justice warriors and, these sensitive motherfuckers. And I also see problems in the right with it. Very authoritarian, okay? Far more dangerous even. It's less annoying, but more dangerous, if that makes sense. And not to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but although I think in many cases, not all, I give you an example of a case where I agreed with the protest, but or at least I could support it and say, okay, it makes sense in that point, in this case, and it was effective, right? The Standing Rock example. Although I disagree with many of the marches, and I just find them to be ineffective. It doesn't do anything. If anything, they're kind of counterproductive. And it's because there's so many of these protests. Like everybody wants to protest for everything. Like if somebody has a cause, like other people just jump into that cause and add their name to it, you know? And what it's doing is it's causing protest fatigue, right? And I'm already seeing it. And if I'm getting tired of seeing a protest, me being someone who thinks, okay, it's their right to do it, right? Just imagine what people that just love Trump or people that just hate freedom of speech, apparently, just think about how they're looking at it. And I'm already noticing it on social media, right? I mean, you'll be shocked to find that you know how many people I see on social media that just fucking hate Trump, but they'll also post about how stupid the protesters are. You know, and it's like a little phenomenon I'm trying to see now. People are getting tired of the protests, right? I saw a certain protest where protesters were blocking the road, and someone ran over one of the protesters, right? And look, I look at that and I say, like, damn, man, like, you know, that's fucked up. But here, when I looked at the comments, the amount of people saying, "Ha, that's what you get. I'm tired of these fucking protesters." There's a lot of protest fatigue going on, right? And I'm seeing more and more videos of cops taking down protesters and bystanders, people that are just walking around giving cops a thumbs up as they beat the shit out of the fucking protester, right? I mean, it's insane. Like people are now encouraging police officers to just shut these protests down, right? And the reason protest fatigue, right? The reason people that do protest and you want to make sure a protest is going to be effective, right? Like you want to make sure that people that are really there for a cause are the ones protesting. Because if there's too much protest going on, if people are protesting about everything, then when there's a real protest going on, like for a real cause, no one's going to take it serious. All right? It's nobody takes it serious. Right? So protest fatigue. Now, why is this important? Many people don't know this, right? And it's very vague, but the Patriot Act, Section 802, it's very vague, right? But it talks about domestic terrorism. If you intimidate or coerce the civilian population, right, it could be considered an act of terror. Right? If you try to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, that can be considered an act of terror. Now, when this shit was written, right, you always saw idiots on Fox News like Sean Hannity and even Democrats, idiots like Hillary Clinton, right, defend it, right? Because those that don't know, the Patriot Act was passed by both Democrats and Republicans, right? And for those that think, oh, Trump's going to get rid of the globalists, and you always heard Alex Jones and them talk about the Patriot Act, right? Has anyone seen Donald Trump trying to get rid of the Patriot Act? No, right? Right, then shut the fuck up. But here's the thing. That can be translated in any way you want, right? They already have water protectors, right, from Standing Rock. They've already arrested not all of them for this reason, but some of them they were charged with terrorism. And if you are considered a terrorist, like a threat to the state that way, You don't even have a right to get your Miranda rights read to you. You don't have a right to a speedy trial. You don't have a right to anything. Like all the rights you have to have a trial and a jury of your peers and all that is stripped from you. All that, right? Now, one may say, "Oh, come on, they're not going to do that," right? Well, one, they've already done it in very isolated instances, but they've done it. Okay, um, and they could interpret it in any way. If you are in federal land, okay, they can consider, and you're protesting in it. You're technically there. They can say you're there illegally, and they can say, you were a possible domestic terrorist, right? They can do it, all right? Well, when you look at this one line, it's a very dangerous line, right? So, all right, influence the policy of a government by intimidation, right? You know, you already seen, right? Public officials, senators, congressmen, right, saying that the water protectors, right, were being dangerous, right, that they were harassing, right, that they were, just, I mean, they don't even say agitators anymore, right? Well, and that's a word that's coming back, but all it takes is for some police officers to say, I felt like they were a threat, right? When I was there, I mean, it felt like they were just being very threatening, and so then we had to arrest them, right? And the fact that so many people right now are tired of all these protests going on, right? And the reality is, if they keep happening at this rapid rate, at some point, and this is going to happen, in my opinion. I think this is very likely, but it's one of the first things that has to start happening if we end up in the situation we're talking about ultimately, and that is if they start arresting protesters and claiming that they're domestic terrorists, right? And before you say that's not possible, okay, I mean, first of all, setting the precedent of this type of law, that is the Patriot Act, right? The danger of that is, I'm sure a lot of these idiots in Congress, trusted George Bush with it. I don't know why, but, or Dick Cheney of all people, right? I'm sure they trusted them. I'm sure, many of you trusted Obama with this type of power, right? The problem is, what if somebody like Trump gets elected? What the fuck are you going to do? This is why you don't set this type of precedent, right? There's also, for those that don't know, if they consider you a terrorist, if the United States government considers you a terrorist, they can kill you with a drone, right? All right, and it's happened, right? Now, some will say, well, look, yeah, Obama killed American citizens with drones, but there's a but, that they were Islamic terror, they were known terrorists, right? Sure, right? Sure. Okay. I mean, like, I get it. Even if you trusted Obama with that type of power. So what do you think's going to happen with Trump? Very dangerous shit, right? Very dangerous shit. Also, what else is not going away? Spying on Americans isn't going away, right? If they find you to be a threat, they will spy on you, right? I mean, they'll look at your phone records. They'll do it, right? They'll who knows? They could get a hold of your text messages, emails. Well, you don't think they can get to your email or what? And that's problematic. And so little by little, people's rights are being stripped away. And if more and more people start being labeled terrorists, look, if a big terrorist attack, another likely something like 9/11 at that scale happens, if something like that were to happen, I don't know who remembers this or not. Like when we went to Iraq, whenever members of the media spoke out against the war in Iraq, they were fired from the job, right? They put a gag order on them. Right? They weren't allowed to speak. And we're talking about so-called liberal outlets like MSNBC, right? It was just considered unpatriotic to go after the president of the United States during the time of war. And if you don't think at least half of the country would be in favor of locking up protesters that are protesting a war, like if we invaded Iran or something like that, if you don't think they'll be in favor of that because they're not being patriotic, and they'll flip it, right? Oh, they're siding with the terrorists. They're siding with the people that attacked us. They're siding with Iran. They're doing this. They're doing that. They are terrorists, right? All right. I mean, I definitely see that happen, right? Now that look, of course, that's the one thing that I do see happening. I'm not saying it's going to lead to total anarchy. Again, more things have to happen on top of that. But to me, that's the beginning. Okay, that's the beginning of the unraveling. What else? So what else? Because that alone ain't going to do it, right? What else? Well, they're not doing anything to reform the drug war. They're going to enforce it harder now on the drug war. They're going to go in on the drug war. They're going to double down on the drug war. Okay, we have a, you know, a Surgeon General right now who thinks marijuana is a bad thing, right? So you're going to start seeing many stupid arrests, right? You have these Blue Lives Matter laws, okay, that if you just resist arrest from a police officer, I mean, this is total overreach by the government here, right? This is the definition of the start of a police state, okay? And I totally can see a lot of revolt here, right? I could see revolts going on. And people are already talking about arming themselves, right? They've been talking about arming themselves. But now, like, they're really doing it. If there's one thing I'm going to keep an eye on, and we should all keep an eye on this, I haven't looked at the data, to be honest, but I just thought of it now, but we should keep an eye on gun sales right now, right? Because I have a feeling gun sales are going to go up. If there's a surge in gun sales, and keep in mind, there was already a surge in gun sales when Obama took office. Everybody swore that Obama was going to just start, he was going to take over everything with the globalists and this, that, and the third, right? If there's a surge from the surge, in Houston, we have a problem, right? Because we have a situation where a lot of people are arming themselves. Now, I call it a problem, but I don't know, maybe it's not a problem for the people arming themselves, We had a situation in, I believe it was North Carolina, where there was some Black Panthers that, had guns. Now, keep in mind, this is an open carry state. People walk into, like, burger shops and shit, okay? They walk into fast food restaurants with semi-autos and all that, right? But they apparently, from my understanding, they stripped the weapons from the Black Panthers here. Right? Now, if that's not an overreach, and if that's not a double standard, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. And if you don't think people are noticing that, then you're crazy. Right? So if we have a situation where, I mean, you had Trump, who is very knee-jerk with his decisions here. And, I keep hearing people saying, oh, well, don't worry, it's going to be kept in line with his advisors. Have you people even seen who these guys' advisors are? Honestly, I think he'd make better decisions without his advisors, to be honest. That's how bad I think his advisors are. Because Trump, he just doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. These motherfuckers do, right? And that's dangerous. I mean, I'd rather take a gamble with a fucker that doesn't know what he's doing than fuckers that do know what the fuck they're doing, right? And when you have a president of the United States threaten martial law, okay, on the city of Chicago, right, and before somebody said, no, he didn't. Yeah, he did, right? Now, what the fuck does, if you don't get your act together, I'm going to send in the feds mean then? What does it mean? Is he going to send the feds to go have pizza with people in inner cities or what? Is he sending the feds, right, to go give them ice cream or something or what? What, is he sending them out there to play patty cake with them? What is he sending the feds for? Just for show? Okay, are the feds going to put on some fucking clown show or some shit? Right? Is a circus coming to town? Are they going to be riding fucking, camels and fucking giraffes and elephants? Right? Is that what they're going to do or what? Like, what do you think the feds are going to do in the city of Chicago exactly? Right? That's not what he meant. Like, this whole, like, let's pretend that's not what he meant game, it's getting old and it's getting played out, right? It's just this. At some point, I mean, you got to just take the guy for what he's saying, right? You're responsible for what you say when you're the president of the United States. That's it, right? There is no, well, that's not what he meant, and well, that's just the way he talks, or he was just being sarcastic. He was being sarcastic. Oh, well, wow, brilliant. Martial law on people, that's not a good recipe, because that's not exactly a good thing, right? And then, of course, you have certain mayors, like the mayor of New York, that have already openly said they won't be complying, right, with the federal government if they ask them to do certain things, like deport people or give them a list of Muslims or whatever it is. So you already have problems at a local scale, right? You already have problems at a state level, right, with some governors already, right, like the governor of California, right, saying that they're not going to follow a lot of protocols that the Trump administration is putting forth. So yeah, there's a lot of problems here. It's not like, it doesn't mean we're going to go to civil war necessarily, but the ingredients for it are there. Yeah, it's there. Not to mention that you already have people that have been waiting for a civil war for years, right? I mean, you have dudes that take over government buildings, right, like over there in Oregon, claiming that the government's being unfair to them, right? I mean, those motherfuckers want a civil war. Now, what else? I don't think white supremacists, right, controlling certain police departments, and for those that don't think that they do, you're fucking out of your mind, right? I'm not saying every single police department, okay, but there's some, and you don't necessarily catch cops, being busted by the feds, using the N-word left and right, okay? Apparently, I know a lot of people think that's just like normal activity. Like, what's the big deal? It's just a word. Like, whatever you say, right? Not exactly what you want from public officials. So I don't know if, that's going to go well with people. And then, right, Muslims, okay, let's talk about Muslims for a moment. As of right now, if you don't believe, okay, that they're already starting to target Muslims and look into them, you're crazy. Okay, the Trump administration has already ordered the FBI to drop all domestic terrorism regarding white supremacists. All of it. Because apparently we don't have a problem with it, right? There was never that shooting in the black church. So white supremacists didn't just shoot up a fucking mosque, right? That doesn't happen. right? Those were all, those are just make-believe, right? So white supremacists never do anything. Right? Let me remind people right now, a lot of people don't know this, right? But that's because the security of the president, which is Secret Service, they're really good at what they do, right? And the CIA is as well. And President Obama had not only death threats, but assassination attempts by white supremacists. A lot of them, right? Record breaking. Right? They were trying to assassinate the president of the United States. And now the guy who just came in is just going to order the FBI to just stop investigating these individuals. I don't know, maybe because he doesn't think they're a threat to him, okay? And maybe because, I mean, it's not surprising from an individual who's demanding a birth certificate, by the way, right? But that's another story. If you look at that, man, and they've already been told to prioritize Muslims, okay? That is insane, right? That's crazy. I mean, could you just imagine, like, if the FBI was told, hey, I want you to stop targeting, okay, hate crimes, okay? No more hate crimes. Just concentrate on Muslims only, right? This is insane. You know what they'll never tell the FBI, right? Hey, I want you to stop investigating, okay, hackers that are trying to steal money, okay, from people's credit cards across state lines, right? I mean, who cares if these banks are losing money, right? Just concentrate on the Muslims. They'll never do that. I mean, they'll never lose priority on that, right? Believe it. So yes, we have a situation that is getting very ugly, right? So if you don't believe that Muslims will be targeted and um, this may or may not happen, it's worth noting that Donald Trump is already speaking in very dangerous ways about Muslims. I mean, just look, first of all, his national security advisors, two of them, right? Bannon and Flynn. One of them believes that Islam is a disease, like a cancer, that needs to be cured. The other one, okay, believes that calling Islam a religion of peace is idiotic and the most retarded thing a president has ever said. Furthermore, also said that we are secretly being taken over by Sharia law. We have someone in the national security panel right now who believes that we are at the brink of Sharia law. That not only is that retarded, stupid, and it's flat out wrong, it's not true, and everybody knows it's not true, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, we're at the brink of Sharia law, right? Okay, it's just stupid, right? But it's also dangerous, right? And not to mention the president who's already called on a ban and who's already called Islam a problem, I quote, a real problem. Well, how do you think they're going to look into Muslims? Exactly, right? How exactly do you think they're going to look into the religion of Islam? What? You know, I mean, how many of them do you think are going to end up in Gitmo? With no trial, nothing. So they're going to be labeled what? Terrorists, thanks to the Patriot Act, right? And for those that don't think, no, come on, man. In this country, you have a right to a trial and to a lawyer and all that. This is bullshit. Oh, yeah? That's what you believe? Really? First of all, that's not the case with treason, right? That's number one. Number two, go read the Patriot Act, right? Go do that. Right now, secondly, they'll argue that no, but now come on, the people that were held at Gitmo were not American though, so they don't have the same rights as Americans. Yeah, tell that to the Standing Rock citizens, all right, that are being detained without trial right now. Go tell that to them. Since you don't believe that that's something that happens in America, right? Why don't you go say that to the Japanese, okay, in World War II, right? They got stripped from their homes and their businesses and sent to camps, right? For people that don't think this shit could happen. It's already happened, right? Now, in today's age and with social media, the world being more connected today, sure, it's definitely more difficult to pull that off today, which makes it more unlikely, which is a good thing. But let's not act like it can't happen. Furthermore, it just takes a couple laws passed by a Republican Congress, and I'm going to quote Marco Rubio here, okay? I'm going to quote him. If we find that you're a member of ISIS or any terrorist group that's threatening the United States of America, we're not going to read you your Miranda rights. You don't have a right, the same rights as citizens, that is, right? That was on a Republican debate. Now, you could say that's all banter, right? But the reality is, this is an individual who's a senator of the United States of America. It just takes a couple bills to be passed. That's it. No, but they passed those religious, you know, that religious freedom law. If you think that religious freedom law is for Muslims, you're out of your fucking mind, okay? If you believe that religious freedom law is for Hindus and any other faith, you're flat out of your mind. That shit's for Christians, right? That's what that's for. Which brings me to a final point. Religious people, right? You know, the problem with religious people is not all religious people, right? So even within that, there's conflicts, right? There's Christians that just want peace and love, and you know, they just want to preach the gospel, and that's that, right? And then, but you know, to say that there's no dangerous Christians, you're out of your fucking mind, right? Just you know, you just are. And and you may say, well, they don't like blow themselves up like the Muslims do. Yeah, that's because they're the ones in power, right? People in power don't blow themselves up. They control the military, right? People in power don't blow themselves up. They control the government, right? They don't need to blow themselves up. They you know, things are already in their favor, right? So don't give me this whole like, oh yes, this religious freedom law, okay? Because yeah, in this country, you know, Muslims could totally just go to the, you know, you could do the experiment if you want, but there's countless incidents where Muslims praying in the park, which they're more than welcome to do, they're taxpayers like anybody else, it's their park too, right? Are being told that they can't do that here, and you know, the women covering their heads or whatever are told, you know, you shouldn't do that, take that off, and you know, nobody, you know, respects their religious freedom, right? Are you crazy? Are you nuts? The shit people believe, it's insane, right? So yeah, I totally see situations where someone is just suspected of, you know, being with ISIS, and well, what does that take? In all honesty, what does that take? Just being a sympathizer. Now, that's very vague. That's very vague. So, for example, if I say, "Hey, look, man, you can't just say they're terrorists. I mean, you got to look at it from their point of view too. You know, from their point of view, they think they're like freedom fighters that are fighting the big empire, the big bad USA, right? That could be considered being a sympathizer of ISIS. And if you're a Muslim and you say that, well, you know, they're going to investigate you. Simple as that. And we have the most thin-skinned administration ever. I mean, this dude can't take any. He can't even stand, right? The press reporting that he had a smaller crowd than Obama at his inauguration. Like, that gets under his skin. Just imagine when people that aren't supporting his wars, right? Just imagine like how he's going to react to that. Just imagine how they're going to react to people empathizing with Muslims, not necessarily ISIS, just Muslims, and defending Islam. Just think about how they're going to react to that. When two members of the national security table right there, right, of the committee, whatever you want to call it, the council, right, believe that either Islam's it's not a religion of peace, it's an illness. They're trying to take over the country. They're trying to pass Sharia law. I mean, we're at the brink of Sharia law. We got to do something about these Muslims, right? Are you crazy? Like, you don't, mark my words, Muslims will be detained without a trial, right? It's going to happen. So I'm not saying this as a threat myself because I don't want this to happen to Muslims. But if you are Muslim, right, whether any, but especially Arabic or black, right, if you're a Muslim, okay, believe me, just be very careful with what you say. It's just a recommendation, right? Because this is not a friendly administration, right, for you. It's not. It doesn't have your back whatsoever. And if you know Muslim friends, I would pass on that word ASAP, right? If I think they should know what two members of the Security Council and how they feel about Muslims. I think that's very important, you know, and that's very dangerous. And if you don't believe in any way, shape, or form that ISIS is going to take advantage of this situation, you're crazy. Okay? If you don't believe some Muslim is going to lose his shit and say, fuck this, or being treated like second-class citizens, and they just do something crazy, because this happens in every group, right? See, every time I say this, anytime I say, hey, that's counterproductive, man, you're going to turn some people into extremists. The argument always is, well, then why are you defending Islam? If a ban and this and that, makes them violent, then obviously we're right. No, you see, this will happen with any group that feels disenfranchised. Any group, right? That's why there's white supremacists that shoot up churches, because they feel like they're being disenfranchised. Okay? That's why there's people of just about every group that commit, heinous crimes. So this is not a matter of because it's Islam. It's just a matter of reality. And the difference between a Islamic terror and white supremacist terror or any other type of terrorism, right? The difference is that in this country, when it's Islamic terrorism, we literally lose our shit. I mean, the panic and the fear is unbelievable. A country that has mass shootings every week lost its shit when a Muslim did a mass shooting in San Bernardino. Right? Just lost its shit. The mass shooting that happened the week before and the week after that, nobody blinked an eye. Because the media doesn't put it out that way. Government officials don't fearmonger when it comes to those things. They fearmonger when a Muslim does it. Now, what is that going to do? It's going to be a cause and effect here. The government's going to get even stricter on Muslims. And what's going to happen? What's bound to happen? They're going to try to raid a mosque or a home, and don't be shocked if there's some, returning fire, If they know they're going to a place like Gitmo, hey, don't be surprised. And then what happens if it's a cause and effect here, right? And then some white supremacist again gets angry because he doesn't feel that Muslims should be around anymore because, look, they're causing terrorists, and he goes to a mosque and shoots it up, which already happened in Canada. And then there's retaliation, okay, because in the mosque there happened to have been not just a Muslim, but somebody of a certain race. And then members of that race get pissed off, and there's another shooting. And then there's retaliation for that, and there's another shooting. This shit can get out of hand very fast. It can get out of hand very fast, like ASAP, right? Believe that. So be careful with that. Now, just a personal story here, okay? Last weekend, I actually went across the border to go party, right? I don't go often, right? And I always go with a group, and I kind of know where I'm at, but I noticed something, right? So when I was actually walking in, right, to one of the, it was like a restaurant / bar. When I was on my way in, and I was there with a friend. The friend had like a shirt. It was some like band or something, but it rhymed with Trump, right? It wasn't Trump, but it rhymed with it. Okay. And the bouncer, at first I thought it was joking, right? He said, "Oh, Trump, no, you can't come in." That's funny. And then we have to, but he was serious, very serious, right? And then I was like, "Oh, fuck." And then I told him, like, "Well, that's not Trump." All right. I told him in Spanish, but that's not Trump. Right? I forgot the name of the band, right? I don't know. And then he was like, "Oh, okay." And then he was like, "All right." And then he asked me, "Who did you vote for?" Right? And I'm like, "I didn't even vote, dude." Which is not true, but I said I didn't even vote. He's like, "All right, come in." Right? Now that may seem very insignificant, right? And maybe it is. Maybe just anecdotal, and maybe it's just this one bouncer, right? But like, I don't know, man. There's a lot of anti-Trump sentiment south of the border. And we're talking people that just do not like the guy, right? And the way he's talking to the Mexican president, him saying, "I might send, do you want me to send some troops out there to help you with those bad hombres," right? That's some threat. Like, man, you don't just threaten the drug cartels like that, right? And if you think for a second that you could just send the U.S. troops to Mexico, okay, with the barrios over there and the colonias, and where there's no light at night, and people that know the area, and there's tunnels in the ground and stuff like that. If you believe, okay, and it'll be a very similar situation to like, I'm not sure this happened a lot in Iraq or not. I wouldn't know, but I'm sure there was a situation where you didn't even know who the enemy was, or who's who, or who's what, right? Like in Vietnam, where troops didn't know who the fuck was a Viet Cong or not. They don't know who was their ally or not their ally, right? You would have a very similar situation in a city like Juarez. You send the troops over there, right? I mean, that shit will be a bloodshed, right? I mean, it wouldn't be pretty. A lot of innocent people, you would have to kill a lot of innocent people, right? And you probably still wouldn't get the cartels, right? I mean, this is proof that Trump just doesn't know what he's doing, right? Like, he thinks it's that easy. Like, you could just send troops over there, and they're gonna just, put the cartels in their place. Like, they're just gonna, waddle their finger at the cartel, like, "Stop what you're doing, okay? Stop crossing drugs, okay?" And like, they're just gonna stop doing it. Like, it's just gonna happen. And like if the people of Mexico in the city are just going to welcome the troops with open arms or something, right? Like if the troops of Mexico are just going to welcome them with open arms. Now, why is that relevant? So if hostilities continue, right, and the United States is ever in a distress or anarchy, which, I don't think it's likely. Some people think it's more likely than I do, but I believe it's possible. If you don't think that Mexico will be opportunistic, right, you're out of your mind, right? If you don't think all of a sudden Mexican troops will be crossing north of the border, you're flat out of your mind, right? If you don't think they'll come to cities that are primarily Hispanic, like El Paso, Texas, um, or something like that, and just kind of take over a town, you're out of your mind if you don't think that would happen. You're simply out of your mind. Like if you don't, and if it's not the Mexican government, if you don't think the drug cartels would be opportunistic, you are out of your mind, right? They're already conducting business here as it is, right? But the drug cartels would be playing a major role in certain cities, all right? A major role, okay? And they'll be very opportunistic. They'll become more powerful in the process. And that's a very dangerous situation, right? Not to mention that I could almost guarantee you Canada will just, you think the United States is blocking their borders. No, Canada will be blocking their borders, right? That's just the way it is, right? You reap what you sow, right? Now, thankfully, I don't think a lot of this is going to happen, okay? I think 4 years from now, there's going to be another election, 8 years from now, another election. In fact, maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong about this, but after the first, and I think I said this before he was inaugurated, after the first 100 days are up, I think a lot of this Donald Trump thing, people are going to have Donald Trump fatigue, and it's going to die out a lot. That's what I'm thinking, right? This whole Donald Trump thing, it's like, yeah, he's still going to be around, and people that really follow politics are still going to be like watching CNN and all that, and or following his shit. I might not even be talking about it on YouTube anymore, right? And before you know it, it's going to be 4 years, and then that's that, right? Not saying it's going to be pretty, not saying we're not going to have problems. And some of these things, like with the protesters and the Muslims, I think these are going to be problems. How, at what scale, I'm not sure yet. But I don't believe, anyway, right, that we're going to find ourselves in a major civil war or anarchy. I don't think it's likely, right? But I believe it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. And could that be me just being, just trying to be positive, right, optimistic, right? Could that just be me just hoping that's what it is? Probably, right? I mean, I'll admit it up front, probably. But we'll see. We'll wait and see how a lot of this shit goes down. All right. I mean, according to some Trump supporters, we're all going to be in a utopia soon enough, right? I mean, these like they're celebrating everything this guy's doing, right? Oh my God, look at everything he's doing! Like he's signing pieces of paper, right? And they're acting like this dude just did something amazing, right? They're celebrating like the Keystone pipelines, and which, by the way, are problems in themselves, right? These pipelines. Um, so we'll see, right? With that said, oh, I forgot. I almost forgot, actually. Since I mentioned pipelines, I thought about something. Water, right? And if there was ever a quote unquote civil war, right? Best believe that water or access to drinking water would be a big component of it. Okay. You don't realize that now because we kind of just take for granted that you could just walk to the faucet right now, turn it on, and get some water, right? But we're more vulnerable than we think, right? And if we aren't able to protect our water source, which we're already neglecting as it is now, I mean, you have the government already lying to Flint, and they're already lying, and alongside the oil companies about these pipelines. I mean, they don't. It appears they don't even give a shit about our water systems, right? So I don't see a reason um, why they would leave a lot of this stuff vulnerable, and it could be vulnerable. Dams could be vulnerable to terrorist attacks, and so a lot of this, you got to think about, and if I mean, just look at how the government is just neglecting. In the richest country in the world that's not in civil war right now, I mean, they refuse to clean up the water in Flint. So just imagine what would happen if something happens to a certain water system. Let's say whether it's a pipeline leaking, whether it's a terrorist attack, whatever it is, and people are left without water in a major city. I don't know, like Chicago or New York, or just imagine. And then the government is just not doing anything about it. And people are having to buy bottled water and go out of the way to get water. If you don't think people will start killing themselves for water, you're out of your mind, right? I mean, for the shit people kill themselves for now, yeah, water would be something they'll kill themselves for, right? So I can definitely see that being a problem, right? Also, aside from Texas, most of the U.S. is connected to the same fucking power grid, right? Now, thankfully, at least he's claimed that he wants to fix the power grid. Trump did, right? But which is they have an acknowledgement of it. But if the power grid went out, right, and there was no internet, right, no way to connect and come on here and to do and give people information for people to look up information, the power grid is very vulnerable right now, right? And I'm not saying it's not secure. I'm saying it's not as secure as it should be, right? And that's just the reality of it, right? So people need to watch out for those type of things, and pay attention to what's happening to our water sources, right? And what's happening with the power grid. These are things that watchdogs need to be looking at, because I'm telling you right now, if we're taking off the grid, who knows what the fuck could happen, right? And we don't understand that concept now because we're used to it. Almost everything you do and the way we all connect and share information requires electricity, right? Your cell phone, you need to charge it, right? Your computer, you need to charge it, right? Wi-Fi needs to be connected. Things are intertwined, okay? So just saying, right? Like I know people think I have this fascination with pipelines. I'm not saying pipelines directly are linked to this. I'm just saying it shows a lack of not just regulation, but concern that this government obviously has for a water source. They have no concern for it whatsoever, right? Not to mention how if everything was taken off the grid, as they started to power up the grid, best believe certain areas are going to be, prioritized. So let's just say hypothetically, the water system is damaged and the power grid goes out, right? Now the water system is different because we're not all connected to the same water source, so that's different. But if you don't think that, let's say, the Trump administration or governors of certain states are going to prioritize as they're trying to power the grid back up. Okay, well, we got to do it in these areas first. And, well, I don't know, there seems to be a delay on these other areas, which, by the way, there's a lot of crime there. How about we send the cops over there, right? Or how about we sent, you know, the National Guard over there? It's just throwing that out there. Right? With that said, don't have nightmares tonight. I'm out.